It's now time for Remember When with Uncle John. John Guess, Ouachita County's resident storyteller and local historian. Sit back now and enjoy a walk down memory lane as John recalls the days of yesteryear in his own unique way. You never know, some of it might even be true. So here's Uncle John, along with his trusty sidekick, Kelly Blair.
Back on Remember When with Uncle John. Well, here we are already at the mid part of the week. Hump day for a lot of people, but here on the Remember When with Uncle John show, it means it is Wassailing Wednesday. What you want to talk about today, Johnny?
Well, let's talk about Robert Gibson.
Robert Gibson?
No, Ricky Gibson.
Ricky
Gibson's brother.
Oh, there you go.
You know, a lot of people don't remember Ricky Gibson.
Right.
Of course, everybody remembers Robert Gibson of the Rock and Roll Express.
One half of one of the greatest tag teams of the 80s.
And still out there doing it, man.
Yeah, he's still going.
Still out there doing it.
Him and Ricky Morton.
Ricky Morton.
Still have bills to pay, I think.
I think they do, yeah. Of course, his son's wrestling now, and he's out there with his son, you know.
Okay.
They both got started in the business. Their daddy was in the ring crew.
Okay.
For the Gulf Coast territory.
I did not know that.
And this was back in the day, you know, when you just didn't walk in off the street and be a wrestler.
No.
You had to have, it was like getting in the mafia.
You had to have an in.
You had to have somebody in the business, and even then you wasn't guaranteed, you know.
Right.
But their dad drove the ring truck and helped set the ring crew up for, was the boss over the ring crew for the Gulf Coast territory. And Ricky kind of got his foot in the door, and, you know, he was a tremendous athlete. He was one of the first ones that would walk the top rope like a cat, you know, and then do that flying drop kick, you know.
Yep, and a lot of flips and turns and all that kind of stuff. They say, now, I didn't get to see Ricky Gibson until a little bit later on in the Mid-South territory. They said he wrestled a lot over in Tennessee, as you said, over in Alabama, Gulf Coast and everything. But they said back in the day he was the cat's meow, that nobody could do what Ricky Gibson could do in the ring.
And he was they said he had the absolute best drop kick in the business, you know, that he put it on the mark, you know. But just a great worker, another one of those guys that spent 25 years in the business, and, you know, he didn't get a lot of the acclaim that a lot of them get now, you know, but it was a different time. You know, it was a different time. It was the days of the territories.
And when you talk about timing is almost everything. Ricky Gibson was a big star in the 70s.
Right,
before
before cable TV.
And the 70s is almost lost on most wrestling fans, even more than the 50s or the 60s. Those guys became legend, and the 70s are almost always forgotten about.
And, you know, they taped a lot of them. A lot of the matches, but they taped over the tape.
They would reuse the same tape?
They would reuse the same tape. They didn't get a new tape every time. So there's not a lot out there of his wrestling. But he was one of the top stars of the 70s, especially in this region. But he was a force to be reckoned with when it came to the athleticism of wrestling.
Oh, without question. And isn't it ironic that, you know, Ricky Gibson and his brother Robert, they teamed for a while.
Yes, they did.
And Ricky Morton was teaming with a lot of different guys and moving around from territory to territory. But Ricky Gibson was involved in the auto accident, which ended up limiting him. He couldn't do half of what he used to do back in the day. And while all that was going on, Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton end up forming a tag team and becoming one of the most famous, most recognized tag teams out there. If Ricky Gibson doesn't have that auto wreck, the Rock and Roll Express might not ever happen.
You know, and another thing, he like so many of the rest of them, Jim Cornette and people like that, he got his start selling cokes, selling programs, working for his dad on the ring crew, eventually became a referee, and from there, you know, got his foot in the door and became a very popular, very well-known wrestler in this region. Never made it to the WWF, you know, but was a legend in the South. It's just a shame that they didn't have the TV exposure then that they've got now. But a very successful, very, very, very accomplished, very well-known wrestler in those days.
Yeah, and like I said, I remember seeing him in Mid-South, and unfortunately he was just a mid-carder at that point, and I always thought it was damn ironic, that here a guy is named Ricky Gibson, and it's instead of Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. It's almost like a mashup.
And, he passed away in 2006. He had cancer, passed away, and was just somebody's largely forgotten now, but, those of us that remember will always remember.
Well, that's why they got us around to Remember When.
That's right.
There you go. All right, that's going to wrap up Remember When for today. We do want to thank ProMed Ambulance Service, the Shopper's Guide, Sherwin-Williams House Paint for being our wonderful sponsors, and want to remind you that you can listen to us anywhere you can find podcasts, including YouTube and even on Facebook. I guess we'll see you tomorrow, John.
See you tomorrow, Kelly.
You've been listening to Remember When with Uncle John on Y95. This broadcast can be heard each weekday morning at 6:45 on South Arkansas's favorite station, Y95.